Hey everyone, welcome to Neighbor Science, the only podcast about political economy and anime. And I really mean that. It's the only one. The other ones don't count.
They are
They're not enough
pretenders.
about those things.
They must be ignored.
There's anime influenced political economy, I would say, out there, but
Right.
we're
Right.
the only one that's fully both. So today, as you can hear, we have Kris. How you doing, Kris?
Hey, it's me. I'm great. How are you?
Doing pretty good. Hoping that I don't
Good.
burp into the mic a bunch of times while we're doing this. Or if I do, it sounds funny.
Right, right. Every horrible gastric eruption is a bit.
So this episode is actually pretty much your idea. So tell us what we're talking
Yeah.
about today.
So, I think it was sometime in the last week that Brookings Institute tweeted out some kind of new fucking co-optation thing where they were like, we can add value to black communities by defunding the police, and it's like this kind of neoliberal hell speech, right? You're like adding value to black communities. Who are you? Why would you say this like this? Um, and I just tweeted out, like quote tweeted them or something like, you've got momentum when the fucking Brookings Institute decides to co-opt your movement if they can.
Yeah.
Because these guys are like the kind of conservative end of neoliberal DC, like just like I won't say too much detail about this, but I was in their buildings for a few weeks doing a gig, and they were some of the most empty people I've ever met.
So just for anyone who doesn't know, Brookings Institute is a centrist think tank. I think they bill themselves as nonpartisan.
Right.
Right.
Right. Which is
Let's
a
double check
fairly
that.
typical thing in yeah. Let's see.
On Think Tank Row, I forgot there's a Think Tank Row. That's awful.
Right. Right. The it's like a ghetto for horrible pundits and wonks who can't compete in the real world, but
Yeah.
who are just drowning in capital and high opinions of themselves.
Okay, yeah, so they describe themselves as nonpartisan, represent diverse points of view, which is
Right.
hilarious. And
Right,
their
right,
stated mission is to provide innovative and practical recommendations
Yeah.
that advance three broad
Yeah.
goals: strengthen American democracy, foster the economic and social welfare, security, and opportunity of all Americans, and secure a more open,
Right.
safe, prosperous, and cooperative international system. That sounded like
Right.
way more than three
Right.
things.
Yeah, yeah, that's like we have like 3 points, but each point is like full of like several distinct
Point A,
concepts.
section 1.
Right, exactly. And of course all of it is, again, it's just like a summary of the neoliberal program, which
Yeah.
itself is as empty as the people who run it.
It actually reminded me of that time when Sarah Palin wrote notes on her hand for a debate, and it was like energy tax cuts
Right.
and lift American spirits.
Right. Right. Oh my god, just platitudes upon platitudes.
Yeah. So
I'm just yeah.
yeah. So we're basically gonna like look at some of their earlier views on police.
Yep.
I only went back as far as 2016 because I'm not a machine. I don't want to.
Right.
I can't.
Well,
I can't
and
read that
history-
many Brookings articles.
Right, right. I mean, as we know, like there was a space time break in 2016, sometime
Yeah, so that was
around,
actually like 40 years ago.
midsummer. Right, exactly. Like everything that happened in conventional time up until 2016 was like a fairly steady, predictable flow of events that like related more or less directly to one another, and culminated in, while often strange and confusing events and outcomes. You could map it pretty quickly with like a fucking calculating machine or a protractor and some paper and say, oh, I can see how like the French Revolution led to the rise of a guy like Napoleon and the destruction of the Holy Roman Empire. That makes sense to me when I look at it. And but then something about 2016 just like it just snapped off into the cosmos, and like we're just kind of like this fragment of space-time that's just now just kind of tumbling through like non-reality and sub-reality and bumping into just random occurrences of things. And so yeah, every day is a year, and every year is like an epoch, and it's all just insane.
Yeah, I think we went from like linear time to Jeremy Bearimy time.
Right. Time no longer flows like in a direction. Time is just like it's like the same water, but just like constantly just like shaken up in a jug.
Yeah.
It's just going every fucking direction and bumping into itself.
Okay, so yeah, so I basically just like
episode,
searched.
Folks.
Yep, that's it.
That's everything.
So I basically just searched the word police on Brookings. This is how I found all their articles. I probably should have tried some other search terms. I think I might have tried like law enforcement as well. But
right.
Yeah, so this is just gonna be like a really cursory overview. I mean, their views aren't they're important in the sense that they're influential to the state, but
set of people, exactly.
We don't care about them that much.
Right.
But it is an interesting topic for one episode. So, so the first one here is actually a book excerpt from some Harvard douchebag. He's like a professor of fuckity fuck whatever.
Right.
And so he wrote this whole book on police reform. And this was April 2016. So Brookings like put the intro of the book on their site via Medium post. Like, so the guy wrote he put the excerpt in a Medium post, and they posted it to their site and had an interview with him. So he starts by saying that policing in America has some really serious problems. So he says, at the scene of the Boston Marathon bombings on April 15th, 2013, Boston police officers and other emergency workers instinctively ran toward the site of the explosions to help the injured and take control of the scene, even while nobody knew how many more bombs there might be. So that's the first problem. The second problem is 3 days later, on April 18th, MIT patrol officer Sean Collier was shot dead in his patrol car by bombing suspects Joe Carr and Tamerlan Tsarnaev, who were apparently seeking to acquire weapons and perhaps provoke a major confrontation with police. In an extraordinary display of public appreciation for police officers and the dangers they face on a daily basis, more than 10,000 people attended Officer Collier's funeral. During that week in April 2013, nobody seemed to have anything but praise for the courageous and selfless way police conducted themselves in the face of those extraordinary dangers. So, what do you think of this so far, Kris?
Oh man, it's just like propaganda slurry. Like, hey, remember those frightening foreigners that we murdered for blowing up some people in Boston? Which, I mean, that's a complicated political situation, right?
I think Joe Carr is still alive.
Yeah, he's probably being hung upside down by his fucking ankles in some basement somewhere, right? Like, yeah. They're like feeding him through a hole in his neck and asking him questions designed to like make him go crazy. Yeah, that sounds probably about right for the United States intelligence apparatus.
Okay, he is still alive. I just checked.
In like the most technical sense, right?
Yes. And I don't know if you remember this, but one of the other things that was happening at the time was a lot of people thought that Joe Carr was like a really cute boy. They were like horny for him. Yeah, I remember that. I was like, oh yeah, he's the one everybody wanted to fuck. Like, he's the bomber
that everybody wanted to like do blowies on, you know.
Maybe now he has a bunch of cool face tattoos like a SoundCloud rapper.
Yeah, yeah, probably. You know, or they're like cigarette burns from the American intelligence,
Right.
deep state, right? Uh,
That's really a
but
sort
yeah,
of
that
tattoo.
yeah. I mean, it's like it's a permanent mark that means a lot about your life. But yeah, that third paragraph that you included, about like the courageous and selfless way that police conducted themselves in the face of those extraordinary dangers. It's like, how many ways can we like needlessly valorize the professional state paramilitary mafia complex? Like
Yeah.
bunch of people in fucking costumes who happened to be sort of sent into their city that they normally brutalize, and they did what in particular that was special and courageous? Like, it's
Well,
bizarre
one
to me
really
that people
special, courageous
see.
thing they did at this time was they
Uh-huh.
locked down the whole city and were like pointing guns at people for looking outside
Oh, I
or
love
trying to
that
go
shit.
outside.
I mean, I often have to be reminded as a person who's inside a lot these days that like looking outside is probably bad for me, and is also like an act of political dissent that I need to be punished for. So I have to say I appreciate our good boys in blue for like threatening the lives of people who just needed to be reminded to sort of stay in their lane by never looking outside their own homes.
I mean, if you look at the Tsarnaevs, then they gain power from your appreciation. So
Sorry, run that by me one more time. I think you broke up there for a sec.
I just said if you look at them through your window, then they gain
Mm-hmm.
power from you.
Yeah. Oh, that's true. It's kind of like how cameras suck your soul out your eyes, which is why I never
Yes.
take selfies. Because that's just a very confusing cycle of power exchange. Um, yeah, but
Okay.
yeah, go ahead, go ahead.
All right. So this is how he starts the thing. Obviously, it's a way to say like, oh, we're about to talk about some problems with the police, but we got to remember that they're actually the good guys. All in
Right,
all,
right, right, right.
when something really
Yeah.
bad happens, they're the good guys. Um,
Mm-hmm.
he did not mention the the fact that they kind of oppressed people while they were doing this lockdown thing, but
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
that's immaterial, I guess. So here's the actual bad part, according to this author. So he says, 2014 and 2015 brought to public attention a series of incidents, many of them video recorded on the cell phones of passersby, that appalled the public, astonished many, and raised troubling questions about the quality and nature of policing in America. Several,
Mm-hmm.
and I underline this, incidents involving the deaths of unarmed black men at the hands of white police
Uh-huh.
officers.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Just deaths. Just
Just
happened.
it was so
um,
weird. It's like the white officers just kind of like they were like rolling along, and they were like, hey, black man who lives here and is in your own neighborhood, how's it going? And the black man was like, well, it's just another day, and and then mysteriously he fell down, and then he perished. And then these
yeah.
police officers were tasked with collecting the body and establishing the time and cause of death. I mean, it's
And
astonishing that America is plagued by these mysterious deaths.
and really when you think about it, it's like, it's hard on the police officers too.
Right. I mean, just so much grief they must feel
Yeah.
for these
No one
incidents
likes no one
involving
likes to
deaths at the
kill.
hands. Yeah, yeah. Not anyone at all. Nope.
So yeah, incidents involving the deaths of unarmed black men. Oh, and that's another thing, unarmed black men, like as if it would have been okay
Right.
if they were armed.
Right.
At the hands of white police officers, albeit in different jurisdictions, came in quick enough succession to be perceived as a pattern and to prompt national debate.
And to prompt national debate. So obviously, like questioning the perception of very obvious murder, and then saying that it was actually controversial. You know, they're like, nobody could really agree what was going on here, but all we know is there was these incidents. It was perceived as a pattern because of like things happening a lot in the same amount of time,
and
they were all the same kind of thing. So it's kind of like it was like a pattern, but maybe it wasn't a pattern.
The thing that always gets me about these two is that like everyone who was an adult at this time also remembers Rodney King.
Yeah.
Either through like indirectly through culture or because they were like watching it happen. Mm-hmm. And there's always this idea that like it's a new thing or that we just noticed. Even though like everyone has always known. It's just like at a certain point we just decided to start ignoring it again. Just like after 2015 it started getting ignored again until May 30th of this year.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, so the pattern was pretty much established after two high-profile incidents just 3 weeks apart. The death of Michael Brown in Ferguson, Missouri, and of Eric Garner in New York City. And again, they said the death of, not the killing of, the murder of.
Right. The mysterious disappearance of these two people.
Yeah. Public concern over the issues raised. Oh my God, this is not a good sentence.
Good.
Public concern over the issues raised drew commentary from the president, led to the establishment of a presidential task force, resulted in investigations of patterns of police conduct by the Department of Justice's Civil Rights Division, and spawned protests against police violence, particularly against minorities, that spread across the nation far beyond the cities directly involved. So I have more underlined stuff. Drew commentary from the president.
Right.
That's it.
Right. Yeah.
Because I mean, the presidential task force, like, if you haven't figured it out by now, if someone makes a task force for something, that means they don't care about it.
Yeah.
They're just trying to make it look like they're doing something.
Exactly. There's like a little like announcement, and they're like, this person here is going to look into the perceived pattern of mysterious life endings of people recently.
Who just happened to be black.
Right. And I'm going to go get on my Xbox and blow up some kids in Pakistan.
Yeah.
Yeah. Basically.
And if I recall correctly, some of the commentary from the president was that BLM are thugs.
Oh, yeah,
and,
I love that shit.
That his professor, Henry Louis Gates, and the cop that accosted him for trying to go into his own house should come to the White House and hash it out over a nice cold beer.
Christ.
But he did make that task force, so.
Right. Yeah, let's drink about it, just me and the pigs hanging out in our favorite watering hole. Jesus Christ.
There was a recent Champagne Sharks live stream, and T put on there was like some Obama live stream thing, like Obama Foundation thing, and so he gave like a speech at the beginning of it, and then it was like other people talking, but it was so fascinating because he spent basically the entire time just like trying to protect his legacy and like brag about the nothing that he actually did, like saying, "Oh, we found new data on, we got some really good data on how this happens. We got data on how black people are being killed."
Right.
And
oh my god.
Yeah, their whole thing was always like, "Oh, we need to go into the community and do the work of finding out how the community feels about it." And he was like, so they're like, cops beat and kill black people, and then they go into the community and they're like, "Hey, what do you think about being beaten and killed by police?" And they're like, "We don't like it."
Yeah.
And then they're like, "Okay, well, we need to figure out something that we can do about this. How about cops stop beating and killing us?" No, something besides that.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Right. It's like, hey, so hey, we brought some cops along so that you guys can have a conversation. So how do you feel about these guys beating and killing you? Are we on
Bad.
camera right now?
0 out of 10.
Yeah, exactly.
And another thing I underlined in this passage was that it was against minorities. Like, I think liberals, but academics especially, are like allergic to saying black people.
Right.
They can't just say that it's against black people. It's got to be against something more PC than that.
Yep. They have to avoid at all costs any kind of clear view of the structure of the system. Right.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
That's why they're so vague about it.
Might think about anti-blackness, white supremacy.
Exactly. Right. Exactly. And the fact that like black people are, as a rule, systematically like boxed into a very specific category, and a very specific set of like, sufferings and so forth, in order to, super exploit them, for capital. And of course it's tied to white supremacy. And oh my God, once you realize that, you become a fucking, Antifa thug and destroy the government. And so they don't want that, obviously. So,
all right, so let's continue the Weasley propaganda here.
Yeah, let's hear it.
So he says, citizens of any mature democracy can expect and should demand police services that are responsive to their needs, tolerant of diversity, and skillful in unraveling and tackling crime and other community problems. There's a lot to unpack in that one sentence.
Love to unravel crime. Love to insert myself into community problems and decide what is to be done about them.
So mature democracy, I think, is an interesting phrase. I don't see that one too often. Maybe it's just because I'm not reading much like liberal crap, but
I was gonna say that's the sort of thing that like liberals, centrist, conservatives, like that whole spectrum of like dipshit politics, like that's like civility shit, So
I guess, is a mature democracy like a democracy that made it so that non-white slave owners can vote? Is that what they mean?
Yeah, pretty much. Where they allow women to wear pants in public.
Yeah. And I love tolerant of diversity.
Yeah, that's
just tolerant. All they have to do is tolerate it.
Right.
And it's diversity. It's, people who are not normal.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, these cops are promising not to kill someone for, looking funny to them, or, being someone that is not part of their own, like, kin network.
Yeah. we need cops that will, not beat black people until they commit a crime. And then they can.
Right. And then, exactly. Then all bets are off,
So he continues, they should expect and demand that police officers are decent, courteous, humane, sparing and skillful in the use of force, respectful of citizens' rights, disciplined and professional. These are ordinary, reasonable expectations.
Yeah, they're also fucking meaningless. Like what do most of these words fucking mean? This is all just like more status quoist, like, white supremacy class shit. Decent,
I,
courteous,
I think he
like
wants
humane.
them.
Okay, fine, but like, come on.
He wants them to be to like softly beat people and to be
Right.
nice to the McDonald's employees when their hash browns are late.
Right, right. I think the humaneness and the respect for citizens' rights of the police was on full display when they got Dylan Roof that cheeseburger, for
Yeah.
sure. They really cared about his little tummy rumbling after he murdered all those people, right? And they're like, "Oh my God, I remember when I was his age and I was kicking around with a fucking AR, trying to blow away a bunch of churches that were not like me." And then they're like, "Ah, but we have to be tolerant of diversity, right? He has a bowl cut. It's
I
not
mean,
my
when you
favorite,
think about it,
but
violence is really like a symptom of negative social environment. So it's really not his fault that he did
yeah,
that. So
he's just online a lot. He just saw some weird tweets and decided that they meant something that they didn't. Uh, yeah. Also,
I wonder if
sparing
he
is
was a Ben
skillful in the use
Shapiro
of
guy.
force. Uh,
Wouldn't surprise me.
yeah, yeah.
Okay, so later he says he starts talking about community policing, and he's like, but whenever someone advocates for community policing, others object, pointing to the lack of convincing
Hmm.
evidence in the research literature that community policing is effective in controlling crime. There are some rather clear reasons for that lack of evidence, including the fact that community policing in many departments has been mere rhetoric, and even where community policing has been implemented in ways that affect operations, the variations in
Uh,
form between departments are too great to permit reliable evaluation. Damn,
in
can you
other words,
imagine community policing just being mere rhetoric?
it's a little far fetched,
Bro.
but it just it sounds like it's just like it's not even just mere rhetoric, but like none of them take it seriously at all. I mean, obviously to us, but it's just he says the variations in form between departments are too great to permit reliable evaluation. In other words, none of them are doing shit, and police departments are a fucking mess. That's basically what that means.
I wonder if the variations in form between departments being too great to permit reliable evaluation would also be too great to permit reliable community policing being effective.
Exactly.
Which, by the way, he started the
Jesus.
sentence with saying, there's actually no evidence that it's effective.
Right, right. And I was
um,
like, I popped into the book too, and like, I think the final few paragraphs of the book still double down on like, we need better community policing. And it's like, dude, you just disproved that it's even effective or that people take it seriously within the policing, the police department apparatus or whatever the fuck you want to call it. Like,
yeah, I
you
mean,
idiot.
I've looked at like a lot of studies about police violence, and I don't recall ever seeing one that shows that community policing does anything. And like,
Yeah.
what's supposed to be the theory that like it's people that live in your community so they won't fuck with you? Like, do any of these people
Hmm.
talk to their neighbors or interact with their neighbors? Do they think that there's like that police aren't going to be like the biggest assholes in the neighborhood who would be totally happy to fuck with you? Like,
Yeah.
what is the idea here?
Right. 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 Exactly. I mean, cops are the kind of people who'd be like, their idea of community policing is just being able to stroll into anybody's fucking barbecue on any given day and grab somebody's wife's titty and like steal some beer out of the fridge, like harass the kids and the animals and then go home and laugh it off, like
Yeah,
it's
I hope I can be policed by, the fucking psychos that are on Nextdoor
right.
posting about, suspicious looking men instead of
Yeah.
psychos on Nextdoor talking about suspicious looking men but in a different neighborhood. Like, what the fuck?
Right, right, right.
So
Oh my
yeah,
god.
obviously community policing is like the thing that they've been all about for a long time. That's the big liberal reform. I mean, all of the other stuff is like, you saw the 8 can't wait shit, right?
Oh my god, I saw that immediately and immediately started like shitting on it all over Facebook because Facebook is where like, the apolitical and the centrists and the libertarians hang out pretty much.
Right.
And so like I was like, all right, I'm gonna nip this in the fucking bud. And like I've like a kind of an acquaintance from back in the day who was like, well, I don't know why like you hate this so much because like, we do need reform and like, it was kind of like this like she wasn't confident. It was the typical liberal shit. She wasn't confident that like we could push something drastic that she admitted we needed. And then she also said, and also like, I'm trying to respect that like, like black people came up with this set of reforms, and I was like, that's tokenizing and it's bullshit because they're paid by fucking capital to do this. Like,
yeah.
They're a plant. And it's a bad set of reforms that don't matter in most places, and the places where they do matter.
Most people seem to have seen through this.
Yeah,
maybe
exactly.
I'm in a Twitter bubble.
Most of us,
but it seems like it did not catch on.
I think eight to abolition and also just the continual feed of like cop brutality. I think pretty much drowned it in its nest. But I think obviously there's going to be like the diehard, like soft-headed liberals who like think that reform is the only thing you can ask for, but like they don't fucking matter. Like we're in fucking
like the ones that were like, oh, defunding is too aggressive and divisive. We need to call it something else, like reform.
Right. And like I'll put it this way, as I've sort of put it in a few different terms to other people. Again. 2016, space-time broke off and we're spinning through a dying universe, right? And now, in terms of like where we're going right now with like neoliberal hell world and fucking fascism and shit, like we're in what I guess we could call like deathmatch acceleration speed run, which means you can't ask for fucking tepid shit anymore. You just ask for everything. And if somebody wants to fight you about it, you fucking knock their shit up. Like you just fucking knock them down, and that's it, and that's all. End of fucking story.
The one that really got me out of the 8 can't wait shit was the require warning before shooting.
Yeah. Oh my god.
That's
same.
I just cannot believe they put that on there.
Right. Holy fuck.
It's so wild. Like it's really
I'm
wild
about to fire. Right.
Yeah, it's like people were fucking setting buildings on fire, and they're like, "All right, we get your point. We'll make them warn you before they shoot you."
Yeah, before they fucking murder you.
Which is, of course, just going to result in them being like shooting at the same time as they're like, "We will shoot at you."
Yeah, we will shoot you. Bam, 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 bam. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and like half the time you also see this in the fucking police videos is like the cops are already being fucking aggressive and then they shoot you. It's like it's obvious they're gonna fucking shoot you. Anybody with a fucking like with fucking like 2 square inches between their skull plates is able to think this when they see people in action, like that person's being aggressive and that person's not. And so the aggressive person is going to fuck up the non-aggressive person because that's what aggressive people do, when they have that much power. And, and of course, when you actually pay attention to cop brutality stories and you actually fucking think about it, like, what the fuck is going on.
Yeah.
It's them telling you that they're going to fuck you up is not going to stop anything meaningful from happening.
Another thing that I saw on one of the Champagne Sharks live streams was a video clip of a bunch of cops that had wrestled a guy down to the ground. And he like at first was not trying to resist, and then they grabbed his hand and started pushing it toward the cop's gun.
Oh my god. Yeah.
Which I
think I
had
heard
never
something
seen
about
before. So they were trying to make it look like he was taking their gun so that they could kill him. And the guy was like trying really they were not able to make him grab the gun. He was trying really hard not to.
God, man. Yeah.
It's just crazy.
Yeah, I heard something about maybe it was that same incident that I heard something about that on the Discourse episode that just came out the other day.
Uh-huh.
Talking about like, oh yeah, cops are pushing hands onto guns now. It's like, Jesus fucking Christ. I mean, well, it's similar but not the same, but it's a similar tactic to whichever night in Seattle it was. I think it was like night 3, when the cops were really fucking gassing people, where there was somebody at the front line with a pink umbrella. So it's like, so it was obvious to anybody who was really watching, like what happened to the umbrella, because it was brightly colored, right? So it was easy to see. So, stupid cop for picking the pink one, I guess. But like, they were all up at the front line, and the cops were like lined up right in front of them in the kind of more typical standoff style of protests, right? Where everybody's like inches away from each other. And, probably most people who are listening have either heard about this or seen it. But if you haven't, basically, these umbrellas are up front because Hong Kong tactics took root in Seattle because of all the gas and shit. And one of the people, she had this pink umbrella, and she was just holding it, right? And it was on her side of this invisible line between them and the cops, where it's like a few inches of space. And I think it's like she twitched the umbrella, and the cop just grabbed it and pulled it toward himself, right? And pulled it toward himself, so then it made her lurch toward the cop, and then they started gassing everybody, right? So,
yeah.
So people who caught that angle on it were like, they immediately shared it, and they're like, look at this fucking shit, right? The cops literally pulled someone into their line in order to make contact forcibly, but in a way that it looked like that person was, the person was in the cop's space technically, right? Even though I don't think that we should consider any amount of space that a cop occupies to be their space, because they shouldn't actually exist, right? But like,
yeah,
in this kind of like in this kind of colloquial way of putting it, the cops were lined up and they pulled the person into their space, and then that was enough pretext for them to start literally just like choking everyone with gas, hundreds of people, and thankfully, Seattle has moved on to the next chapter of things, and we'll see what happens there.
So were there like other angles being shared that made it look like she was attacking him? Did you see that? Any of that?
Yeah, I think I wouldn't be surprised if some of the mainstream, like local news and shit were not catching that. Maybe had like more of a view from either behind the crowd or behind the cops or something. But definitely, at this point in our lives, in the timeline, right? Like, we're forming a kind of a counter panopticon, where
surveillance.
we have, that's right, surveillance, right? And so we have all our phones and stuff, and it's like, as long as they are afraid enough of shutting down the internet and shutting down digital communications and stuff, we'll continue to be able to pretty much capture and upload all of this shit,
right,
as long as we're all present at the same time, So that was an interesting thing that kind of popped into my head as a result of little moments like that. But it wasn't the only one that was like that, where it was like different angles would have yielded a different, interpretation.
Right.
It's just like basketball, really.
So, speaking of cameras, the next article here is on body cameras. This is from 2017. Surprisingly, they say body cameras do nothing to prevent police violence. So they cite like some studies on body cams. They did one in the DC police and I think one in the New York NYPD. And found that there was no change in the level of violence that police would use if they were wearing body cams or not. This is something we know, like they'll just turn it off.
Yeah, well, and that's the
or it'll capture the footage and
cams,
they
right?
will just, nothing bad will happen to them anyway.
Right, because they're like, yeah, we're cops and we were just enforcing the fucking law, and you're like, the law's bad and you're bad. But
yeah, they'll also just like they'll just say stop resisting even if the person is like clearly not. They'll just start saying it constantly.
I've seen that shit, man.
Yeah.
It's fucking pathetic.
Yeah.
It's like if that shit worked for everybody, can you imagine the amount of people just walking around going stop resisting? It's like trying to take your phone or something, just stop resisting, punch you in the face, run off, you know. Yeah.
So they say not only are they not effective, but they're also a huge cost. So DC spends $2 million a year on the data storage that you need to run those fucking body cams. On top of the $1 million that they cost to buy in the first place. And so they conclude if MPD, which is the DC police, chooses to keep body-worn cameras, it should be clear about what goals it is trying to achieve in doing so, and why the lab's RCT could not measure randomized controlled trial, could not measure those effects. It is possible that body-worn cameras will have bigger impacts on police behavior in other cities, but places considering implementing body-worn cameras should follow DC's lead and rigorously evaluate their programs to be sure they're getting the progress they hoped for. So I'm just going to double check, but pretty sure that they are still using those body cams. So it's not like they evaluated it and were like, oh, actually, this isn't effective. We're not going to do it anymore.
Right. Well, I think one of the interesting things about body cams is like they on their own don't they don't prevent police violence, as we have just discussed. But the fact that we at some point started making police wear them, and then police started doing all these shenanigans, is basically proof that like when presented with a corrective measure, police will fucking ignore it and make a bunch of shit up instead, right?
Yeah.
Like they will absolutely just step around shit and be like, fuck it, fuck you. And you're like, oh, okay. So what does this mean about the cops, right? Like it's just further evidence in the gigantic shit pile of evidence against cops being worth anything at all, or even worthy of being in our fucking society, you know?
Yeah, and then even whatever rules you put on them, they're supposed to be the enforcers of rules. So how is it going to do it?
Exactly. And this is where liberalism just like fucks itself in the head, basically.
Yeah, it's like the same thing with like, we need our government to be more accountable. It's like, well, they're the government, so by definition, by structure, they cannot be accountable to you.
Exactly. They'll only appoint their task forces, which is them, to do this, right? Like the classic joke about like the CIA investigated itself and found no wrongdoing, you know? And you're like, well, of course they fucking didn't, right? Like, yeah.
Oh yeah, and that was something I was going to say earlier when we brought up in the guy's book led to investigations, resulted in investigations of patterns of police conduct. Like investigations are just like task forces. It's just like a way for them to delay doing anything and just give an excuse for, people who aren't as suspicious or skeptical of them to be like, oh, well, they investigated themselves and they said they actually didn't do anything wrong, so it's fine. It's
right.
I think the whole thing is like just getting enough tension released. They aren't trying to satisfy everyone. There's going to be people that like see through all their bullshit, but the bulk of people who maybe like don't have a direct interest in stopping police violence, who are just like, hey, this is really fucked up. You guys should stop doing that to people. Why are you doing that? They can get them to stop paying attention as closely if they're like, oh, okay, we're doing an investigation now. But yeah,
man.
So speaking of investigations, here is an investigation on school resource officers. So if you don't live in this horrible, horrible country and you don't know what a school resource officer is, it is a cop that they put in schools to beat kids who are being criminals, basically.
Jesus Christ.
And like look for drugs on people and shit like that. And to of course make make the white kids feel safer.
Yep.
So this article is called "Does Policing Make Middle Schools Safer?" And I put the header image from this article in the show notes because I just think it's so interesting. Are you seeing it? Can you describe this? Like, how can we describe it?
It's dismal, to be honest. It's just like it's the top banner for this article, and it's a picture of like a fucking cop. He's got
it's like on the left, it's like this chud pig, and then
real just like red faced fucking old like boomer.
He's really red.
In a cap. yeah. Just the kind of guy who orders beer by bucket and like has like I don't know. Just beats the shit out of his spouse. Like you could tell this guy is one of the 40%, and he looks dumb enough to not get away with it.
Yeah. And he's got to be like in his 50s. He's got gray hair.
Yeah.
And
all his real glory days behind him now,
Yeah, and so he's getting a handshake and a shoulder pat by I can't tell if this is like a non-binary person or just like a kind of feminine looking boy or a masculine looking girl. I'm not sure. They have like a kind of side cut type hairdo with
young
like
adolescent,
curly
right? Who's
hair falling down on the other side.
Right. Yeah.
And then there's like a brown kid behind them who looks kind of standoffish.
Frankly uncomfortable.
Yeah.
like how the fuck did I get in this shot?
Yeah.
Why am I here? Yeah.
And then one other girl in the background, can't really tell her facial expression. Her hair is kind of covering her face and she has a shadow on it. But I just thought that was an interesting picture.
Yeah, it's very, 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 very posed. Like they caught they got the cop and this one kid to like make nice for the camera, and I think the other two were just kind of stuck in the shot somehow, and they're like, no, stay, it's fine. And then it just looks that way, like it's just awkwardly done.
Yeah,
very cursed.
So the article starts by talking about this program in North Carolina that is just like face of madness psycho shit to me.
Yeah.
So they say, in a recent study, I rigorously evaluated the effectiveness of Senate Bill 402, Section 8.36, passed by the General Assembly of North Carolina, a grant program that provided selected school districts with $2 for every $1 spent to train or hire SROs in elementary and middle schools. So for every dollar they spent on putting cops in elementary and middle schools, they gave them $2.
Right.
Wow.
Right. This is, oh my God. This is so fucking fucked up. So they're basically saying like, we will pay you double what you spend on putting cops in children's schools.
Yeah.
And does it specify where that money even goes, or it just goes to the district? What is even happening?
It sounds like it goes to the district. Yeah.
So basically, some school administrator is getting like $100,000 for the $50,000, that they pay the cop. Yeah. Damn.
And North Carolina, by the way, is like one of the bottom 5 states for their school system in the country. It's one of the worst. So it's great that they're injecting cash in the form of let's hire more cops in schools. That fucking rules.
Right. Instead of being like, we could just cover some school lunches and more like social programs for these kids, so that they can like focus and like, study better. And really
Well, they
like
can do that.
develop some
You have to put
self-esteem.
cops in the school to get the money.
Right, right. Yeah. Fuck.
So the author says they compared disciplinary acts of 460 middle schools over a 7-year period, some of which received the matching funds and some of which did not, before and after the policy was implemented. And they used statistical techniques to make the comparisons work. So they start off saying the obvious bad stuff about school resource officers. So it says, despite the North Carolina position statement, research shows that increased frequencies of interactions between school students and school resource officers were not related to feelings of safety at school. Rather, student experiences at school were better predictors of feeling of safety. So, like, if the school is better in general, then they're going to feel safer in it, which makes complete sense. And by the way, like, there are studies of just interactions with police in general, and how safe it makes people feel. People's opinions of cops are inversely correlated with the number of interactions that they have with them. So the more you interact with cops, the more you think they suck.
Yeah, exactly.
And so they also say that males, students who have strong connectedness with schools, and students who had positive attitudes toward SROs reported feeling safer in schools. However, females, African American students, and students who have experienced various forms of school violence, such as fights, arguments, bullying, or religious teasing, reported feeling less safe in schools, even though SROs were present.
And I just find that, like, that phrasing, even though, is just like so disingenuous and hilarious. Like, the black kids don't feel safe when the cops are in their fucking school. Are you fucking kidding me? Are you goddamn out of your goddamn mind? Like, or like the young women who, like, I mean, we know, like, there are a ton of fucking sex predators in the force, you know, like the ones who, you know, will like detain some young woman or an underage girl and be like, oh, well, you know, now they're in detention, we can have sex with them and it's not rape because we're cops and legally, it's in the law, or it's legally right. There was a story about that recently, and it's like,
I think there's still 7 states left where that's legally not rape.
Right. It's astounding because it's, to me, it's partly because of like it's astounding because of like the Puritan sort of tone of the country, and like you would think that the shit that the cops like, you know, they're like the puritanical sort of bullshit in our government's sort of culture and our like prevailing white culture, I guess, or like I should say dominant white culture. You know, that makes sense for like the oppression of not non-whites and women and stuff like that in general. But like they're so sex phobic that like you would think that, you know, they would not have had that codified. And so I'm just like, wow, like what the fuck? How did that happen? You know, like, again, cops are bastards and the government is bastards. But I'm just like, how did this become a thing? Even, I mean, like in I gotta America?
Think it has roots in like the slave catching.
That's kind of what I was wondering. Yeah. Right. Where they're like, oh, if we catch some quote unquote subhumans, you know, then it doesn't matter, right? Like we're the cops, and it, you know.
Yeah.
Fuck, man, that's so fucked up. Ugh.
Yeah, there was a really good Pod Damn America episode recently about the origins of police. So they say approximately 23 million taxpayer dollars were spent to supplement local districts funding for SROs in North Carolina between 2013 and 2017. Jesus. So God, that's like $6 million a year. Holy shit. So during the 2013 to 2017 period, the annual amounts represented less than 1% of the state's budget. Relatively speaking, the dollar amounts were not excessive. And I think less than 1% of the state's budget really means close to 1% of the state's budget.
Yeah.
And 95 FTEs. So
Jesus Christ.
About 96 people can work full time for each of those 4 years on that amount of money.
Fuck.
So they start doing a little hedging in the next part. So they say, I agree with a National Association of School Resource Officers, Jesus Christ, report that notes that it is difficult to inventory all that an SRO can do for a campus and its surrounding community. Moreover, it is certainly inappropriate to quantify the costs of saving lives, which school resource officers have done.
No.
However, it is also important to examine how doubling down with more SROs can have negative life-altering effects for students. For example, there is evidence of racial disparities in arrests by SROs. Well, you don't say. 2 juvenile judges found that student arrests and juvenile court referrals increase when SROs are present in schools. It is important to acknowledge that increased arrests do not necessarily mean that schools are safer. These judges also noted that a primary responsibility of police officers is to make arrests when there is probable cause. These probable cause judgments may be contributing to disparities in law enforcement referrals for specific racial groups. So that's like, yeah, I mean, that's the issue. That they are the ones that are in charge of deciding if it's probable cause or not. That's the problem.
Exactly. It's just ridiculous. I mean, also like this fucking weasel shit about it is certainly inappropriate to quantify the cost of saving lives, and you're like, can we go back to the part where cops regularly kill people?
Yeah.
So, like, what the fuck are you trying to say here? You know, like, if your calculations are accurate, they could have employed 95, 96, like fucking like top tier social workers. You know, like fucking like Spartan boot camp level social workers who are like just fucking roided up with compassion and and
that 96 full-time workers that's workers making $60,000 a year, so
exactly, like
they're not being underpaid.
Yeah, exactly, like they could have done something radically different with that money, but of course they didn't.
So after this part, the article actually gets better. So thanks to the empirical evidence, the author finds that SROs have almost no effect on safety. School race has almost no effect on safety, and that the most powerful determining factor is the school environment, which is primarily related to factors controlled by the state, as in like how much money goes into schools.
Yep.
So like the more resources they have, and the more like the smaller the class size and all that stuff, the safer the school is.
Yeah.
Really,
I was going to say like the school district relationship to class is something that, is worth bringing up too, right? Like race and class going together probably in this case in a lot of ways, where you're like, if you are in a district that's not getting much money and you're from like a poor community that's just like, if you're poor, it means you're like under constant pressure and you're very anxious and things get negative really quickly, So, I don't know how economically mixed these schools are in North Carolina, but it would also be interesting to see that sort of factor.
School funding is like one of the most direct like race class relationships there is, because school funding is determined by property taxes. So the richer the people are in an area, the more funding their school gets, because they pay more property tax.
Totally, just like fucking just fucking galaxy brain meritocracy bullshit, right? Like,
yeah,
they're like, if you're rich, it means you deserve it, and if you're not, it means you don't deserve it and you're bad and you should work harder. But we totally live in a fucking fair system. We
need students to get ahead by like getting a good education so they can get a good job and get ahead.
Right.
And by the way, we're going to determine how well you can get ahead entirely on the amount of money that you have currently.
Right. What a fucking travesty.
All right. So the next one I have is from May 2020. So this is like Actually, let me go to the April 2021 first. So, it says after lockdown, but before George Floyd. So,
which is key to understand.
So this person says that we should use the National Guard to patrol the streets. So they start by saying that 15% of NYPD officers are out sick due to COVID.
Right.
Not surprising since none of those fucking assholes ever wear a fucking mask.
Right.
Too bad not enough of them are dying of it. But anyway.
Yeah.
So the author says since coronavirus has taken out a bunch of cops, we should let the National Guard police the streets. So I just have one excerpt. This is actually a really short article. So they say, it may be the most prudent thing we can do to prevent a risk of deteriorating social stability and security conditions in a number of American cities in the spring and the hot, potentially very dangerous summer of 2020. Not a very good sentence there. Yet it is also highly fraught and requires significant preparation. Oh, you don't say. Including for training guard personnel quickly and pairing them with police if and when they go on the beat.
Jesus Christ.
And this really gets me. The warrior culture and warrior profession are much different than those of police officers. What in the fuck are you talking about?
That's just some fucking
cops are like more of a warrior culture than fucking soldiers are. What the fuck are they talking about?
I think it's like I'm trying to like take a stab at like what I've heard from people who are more like military analysts and stuff, and there's like a concept, right, that like there's something like military bearing and like a kind of discipline that is instilled in like military officers in particular, but also in the troops. They're disciplined and they're like sort of grave, serious people who like are like standing up for what's right, and that's why we send them into the field. And you're like, oh, that's not necessarily true. There's definitely, well, I'll put it this way, and I will give them this. There's far more philosophy that has gone into military and military science over the centuries. Sure. The police, they have fascism. Okay. That's what the police have, right? So that's what I'll give them. But we also know that like the National Guard and the Army and everybody else is a bunch of fucking like blonde 17-year-olds with a hard-on whose wives are getting fucked by the comrades pretty much every weekend. So like if that's what warrior culture is, like I'm like, okay, I mean, I guess I'm iffy about it, but sure, why not, right? But if they come home, then like, the fun's over, right? So,
and like the people that I've known that have signed up for National Guard are like, they basically just want the valor. They don't like, they don't think that they're like at war. They're like, I guess, if the time comes to serve my country, I'll do it. But, in the meantime, I'll get like money for college and blah, 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 and valor and stuff.
Right.
But cops literally think they are at war all the time.
Well, exactly. Yeah.
They think they're like part of the fucking eschaton and that
right.
They're like meting out divine justice. Like they're the most warrior culture besides maybe the IDF in the world. Right,
absolutely. Well, I think this is what to make a kind of to press the point, because maybe this is just my bias, still kind of rattling around inside my head too. But like the cops don't have like Bushido, right?
Yeah.
The cops are not put through like fucking.
They have the opposite.
Sorry.
They have the opposite of Bushido.
Exactly. This is what I'm saying. All they have is like fascism, and white supremacy and shit, right? Which is the exact job that it's intended to be. Is the job of being police is to be a fucking fascist pig who oppresses people who aren't, blue-eyed white males and their female property, basically.
So, let's go over the 7 virtues of Bushido and see if it applies to cops.
Let's fucking do it.
So number one, gi, which is integrity.
Uh-huh.
Be acutely honest throughout your dealings with all people. Believe in justice, not from other people, but from yourself. Hell no.
Uh-huh.
They will lie
cops
their
do not
asses
fucking
off.
have that. Yep. They don't give a fuck. Yeah.
They will like openly plant drugs on people and be like, yeah, I'm doing this so that I can fucking arrest you. Try something.
Right.
Ray, which is respect. True warriors have no reason to be cruel.
Mm-hmm.
No. They don't have that.
Right. They don't have that at all.
They have the
I love
opposite.
it. They do not need to prove their strength, and they're like constantly, yeah.
You, which is heroic courage. Hiding like a turtle in a shell is not living at all.
That in itself.
That's the most opposite the one they have there.
Yeah. Like it's
driving
it's
around in a
like,
tank to like shoot fucking sound cannons at people holding umbrellas.
Right. Like these fuckers are like they show up strapped up and like with their fucking helmets and shit on and everything, literally hiding like a turtle in a shell. So according to Bushido, cops are not living things. So, hey. Okay.
So mayo, which is honor. Little Chinese joke, mayo, they don't have it.
Nice. They do not have it.
Gene, which is compassion, of course, fucking not.
Oof. Right, clearly.
Makoto, which is honesty and sincerity. So we already touched on that one.
We covered that one. Yeah.
And Chu, which is duty and loyalty. Well, they have loyalty, that's for fucking sure.
Right, to each other and themselves.
Yes. So they have half out of 7.
Right. When it's like what I'm seeing here on the Wikipedia is they're immensely loyal to all of those in their care, which is definitely not what cops do.
Right.
Like, except maybe capital, capital and capitalists. Yeah. I guess if they consider those to be in their care.
The thing that's in their care is windows.
The argument, but...
Store windows.
Right. Cops love windows. I don't get it.
Or white supremacist shooters.
Yep.
Give them a lot of respect.
Roof thing. Yep. The kid in New Mexico. Fuck that guy.
Yeah. Or the guy in what city was it where that young kid got shot in the arm? Was that Seattle?
Which kid? I mean,
like a guy drove his car into a crowd of people, and then got stuck.
Oh yeah, that was Seattle.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. They definitely protected his ass.
Yep.
So yeah, that was the end of the article. By the way, that was the whole thing. Like the warrior culture and warrior profession are much different than those of police officers. And that's it.
And I love how
great article.
we just said so much more. Right, we just said so much more about that than the article itself did. Like, okay, let's talk about Bushido. Like, that's a legit code of honor, right? That's a code
pay me $110,000 a year to write this bullshit.
Seriously, right? Oh man.
Okay, so the next one is from May 2020, and this is still before George Floyd. Maybe not before the incident, but before it got all the attention. Brookings reposts some fucking psycho from this other site, which has a terrible name, Lawfare. And they say...
Lawfare,
Oh, you've heard of it?
I've heard of it, yeah.
Okay. So they say that cops need to act as a deterrent on gang violence after the first wave of COVID. And that we also need to, quote, organize food banks. So the passage I pulled out here is, such a focus is all the more urgent as gang violence is likely to increase, in part because finances of gang members, like those of most Americans, will be depleted, and street crime, such as drug dealing, may be driven by food insecurity. I like that they point that out, and they're not like, maybe gangs are caused by food insecurity. Or
right.
a lack of opportunity for people. Already, some U.S. localities have experienced a rise in shooting, including fatal attacks over local drug retail markets, in addition to an important focus on well-tested and effective problem-oriented policing. Maybe that's their new reform thing instead of community policing.
Right.
Responses for avoiding a renewed rise in violence may include engagement with local community leaders to organize food banks and to discourage street violence and retaliation. I like how they don't say, like, we need to fund food banks or anything. We need to organize them.
Right.
As if they're just in shovels, you know?
Yeah. We need cops to control the food supply. That's going to really solve a lot of problems in America.
Well, they are going to work with local community leaders, so, you know.
Oh, yeah, no, that's true.
Not all
That'll
bad.
just make everything better. Yeah. Love to organize with a local community leader.
That reminds me, I tried to, I was trying to, like, talk to someone about, like, you know, just because some people are saying that, like, they don't want people to, you know, destroy property and loot stores, doesn't mean that's what all black people think. And they're like, well, I'm listening to the community leaders. It's like, well, how do you know who they are? And I can't remember if it was the person I was talking to originally or someone else that chimed in. They were like, oh, it was someone who chimed in. They were like, well, I would look at a registry of local nonprofits and see who the heads of those nonprofits are. I'm not kidding.
Yeah.
That was their actual response.
Jesus Christ. What the fuck? Oh my god. It's just exhausting.
Well, we're almost done, fortunately. Another part of this article was cops should stop going after undocumented immigrants because doing so is bad for the cops.
Oh. God damn it.
They said pressuring local police forces to check immigration papers of residents and obligating them to prioritize hunting undocumented individuals will ultimately hurt law enforcement. The George W. Bush administration tried that policy. It did not help reduce crime, and local police departments resented it and found it counterproductive. I'm sure they did. Diverting them from other anti-crime priorities and alienating local communities.
So basically, what happened is the cops realized that by going after undocumented immigrants, they got to be even more unpopular and nobody would fucking talk to them at all. That's what I'm hearing.
That is also what they say. They said communities in fear, including those with legal immigration status but whose relatives are undocumented, shut down and refuse to interact with police forces.
Well,
the sense of alienation grows and protests against police can escalate. In the process, vital information on serious crime can be lost. Aww.
Right. So like because people realize even more than usual that you're a fucking vermin, that like you don't get to like snoop around in their dirty laundry anymore, you fucking assholes.
Yeah. I don't think at any point during that article were they like, oh, by the way, it's also bad to like, you know, oppress people for not having papers.
Right.
Nothing about that. Just,
right.
Oh, well, you know, it makes it harder to help the real benefactors of police, white people who need them to solve crimes for them.
Right.
All right, so finally we have the Defund the Police article. This is from this month, June 2020.
All right, so this fucking Defund the Police thing, as I tweeted, as I mentioned, you know your movement has momentum when fucking Brookings decides that they need to get ahead of this shit and put out their own, you know, tepid milquetoast, fucking watered down bullshit centrist paper where they're probably going to like defend the, you know, the fucking, I don't know, rights and privileges of cops somehow through like a bunch of weasel words. But so here directly from their article, states play a small role in financing policing, mostly through highway patrols. Instead, most police spending occurs at the municipal level, 86% in 2017, according to the Urban Institute, which is another, fucking think tank. Because of this decentralized funding structure, defunding the police will mean paying particular attention to those municipalities whose budgets show the most egregious imbalances between police and community improvement expenditures. And, okay, I mean, sure. Yeah, go ahead.
I gotta say, I was like getting down on electoralism, especially after the primary was stolen before our eyes.
Right.
But like thinking about this, if people get into electoralism at the municipal level, I think that would actually be a way to actually make a difference in policing, because they actually have the power to disband or at least defund the department.
Yes, that's actually so I'm into the just the really broad strategy of municipalism, of basically doing what you just said, and focusing at the municipal level, and on municipal structures and budgets and stuff like that, so that you can kind of create local reforms if you have to, and actual good shit if you can. I forget who I was talking to, but we were saying how what we should do is just run a bunch of sheriffs everywhere, get them elected, and then they'll just themselves just disband the police because they ostensibly have the power to do so. And then the sheriffs would, through their office, just be like, all right, community, let's talk this out. I think if
run
that
sheriffs
is
and
a
start
viable
fragging.
The what?
I said run sheriffs and start fragging.
Yeah, exactly. Parody satire.
They have qualified immunity.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, why not, right? And I think, if people find that to be viable in their municipality, they should absolutely do it. Just run whoever the fuck you've got who isn't just going to take the money and run, or be a cop themselves, right?
Run the most stoner guy
Yeah, exactly, right. He's just somebody who's just going to be chill and popular, and just run them. So let's see. What else do they say? They say, okay, a 2017 report by the Center for Popular Democracy, Law for Black Lives, and Black Youth Project 100 examined the budgets of 12 major U.S. cities and counties over the last 3 decades. Okay, they found that funding dedicated to incarceration, corrections, and policing has come at the expense of infrastructure spending, mental health services, housing subsidies, youth programs, food benefits programs, and other basic services that Black communities desperately need. Huh. I am so shocked, I tell you.
Wow, budgets are limited? Are you sure?
And pouring money into one thing at the municipal level takes away from other things. Well, but I don't fully grasp how this could be. Okay, so Black majority cities.
Can you go over that again one more time?
So, well, the problem is that these municipalities can't print their own money anymore.
That's true.
Like they did 200 years ago.
They need municipal banks.
So, yeah. So it's unless they basically communize, they can't. They have to deal with the zero-sum bullshit. Which is why, you need to organize, to put people in these crucial roles like the sheriff or I think treasury people, things like that. Let's see. So Black majority cities such as Atlanta, Baltimore, Detroit, Oakland, California far exceeded the average for police funding. What a big surprise again. And most of the 12 budgets allocated more than a quarter of general funds to policing. A quarter of their general funds.
I wonder if those Black majority cities had Black majority governments.
That's what it just came to mind for some reason.
Because otherwise that would be like a symptom of white supremacy.
Some kind of it's almost like it's kind of legacy that never went away.
Yeah.
Question for the audience, I guess. Everybody go do your homework. Of the cities and counties profiled, Oakland gives police the largest slice of the pie at 41% fucking percent.
Wow.
That's ridiculous. Somebody did a similar rundown on LA because of, all this shit going on. And I think LA has something like the same kind of number where they're like, yeah, they pay about something like 30-40% of their city budget to just fucking law enforcement, which as somebody did a comparison to like a household budget, they're like, that'd be like if somebody's like, oh, so like, what's your budget like? And they're like, yeah, so I pay like, $200 in rent and like $200 for groceries and then like $1,500 for guns.
Yeah.
What the fuck?
That's the drill
What the
tweet,
fuck? Like,
but instead of candles, it's guns.
right, yeah. Yeah, exactly. Please help me. My family's dying. Let's see. Yeah,
That's like my neighbors. My neighbors in this neighborhood. I live in like a shitty townhouse community, and I have all these neighbors that have like all these security cameras on their fucking townhouse. Like these houses are like, and just bear in mind this is not very expensive at all for Northern Virginia. They're like $450,000 townhouses, and
right.
it's like, motherfucker, what do you think people are gonna steal from your stupid fucking shitty townhouse? Nothing. You don't have anything worth stealing.
Damn. Right.
Maybe a TV.
Right. Right. Your fucking poster of corn or something. Like, come on. Yeah.
Some of the busybodies in the neighborhood, like a couple months ago, someone just like went and like car hopped and was like rummaging through people's cars to like look for like, petty change or whatever. They went through my car. I don't keep anything valuable in there because why would I? What do I even have to keep valuable in there? And yeah, they were like on the neighborhood Slack being like, "Oh, we're looking at people's cameras to see if we can see the person." Like, what are you gonna do? And who gives a shit?
Yeah.
Lock your car if you care. Like it.
Right.
It's not a big deal.
Right. Yeah. Just buy a thicker car.
And it's really like they just didn't lock their door. That's it.
Jesus Christ. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, come on, people.
Anyway,
it's no, yeah. I feel like it's one of those things where you're just like you have to take like a minute to like just like push the bullshit out of your brain again because you're like, these people suck.
Yeah, I kept getting notifications for like 2 days about it, and I was just like, oh my god, you guys, please.
Yeah.
The funniest thing was one of the people that was really getting involved. Her name is Becky.
Oh, this is too good.
It's like, come on, man, that's a stereotype.
Right. Oh man. So, speaking of bullshit charges and calling cops for no reason and stuff, here's a conservative liberal statement on how much policing harms the public. So they cite a report that 39% of prisoners should be, according to them, should be, in big fucking quotes from me, in treatment, community service, or probation rather than incarcerated because they are nonviolent, low-level offenders or have already served long sentences. So, I
like how they try to make that out to be like an objective statement. Like,
right.
According to this report, with this statistic, like, these people should be and blah, blah, blah. Like, should is completely a value judgment. That is your ideology. Don't try to launder it through a fucking report.
Right. Like, oh, they've already served their time. Or like, oh, they're just like slapping the wrists, like they should be in community service. You're like, no, they shouldn't have ever been arrested for weed or for fucking, I don't know, backing their car into somebody's car or whatever the fuck it was, or like the bullshit that fucking black people get killed for all the time, like selling Lucy's or what was it, like a $20 bill or like a check or something with George Floyd?
$20
where was like,
check.
oh, it's a counterfeit, and it's not a counterfeit. It was literally
okay. Call the
legit.
Secret Service, motherfucker.
Right. Like, you want to fucking call the Federal goddamn Reserve for this, Yeah. So get the IRS on the phone so you can wait for 3 hours like the rest of us. So
what the other thing is here too, like I think this type of person like really underestimates what probation is actually like. Like, they're just like, oh, it's just like probation, you just have to like, be good for a little bit. No.
Right.
It's way worse than that.
Yeah. Yeah, these are the straight laced kids in the fancy fucking charter school who like never actually had to go to suspension or detention, and so they're
Yeah.
like, yeah, of course they deserve that. They're like, of course they did. They fucking broke the rules, and you're like, do you realize how fucking inhumane and pointless all of this shit is? Of course you
Yeah.
don't. Like you never have to fucking worry about this shit. Fucking cake eater. So. Right. So like, okay, so they're like, okay, these people should be punished slightly less. 39% of prisoners should be punished slightly less, instead of being put in incarceration, like formal prison, right?
Which I do like that they put the number here. They said this amounts to nearly 600,000 inmates.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's a lot.
Just think about that fucking number. That's
right.
Insane.
Yeah. It's also proof that socialism is perfectly viable because they're just feeding these people, and housing them. And now prison sucks and it's shitty, but it means that it's possible, right? Like they took all these people.
Just dial
out
up the food quality.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Just be like, dude, like 600,000 people literally just like on vacation sounds way better.
Yeah.
I mean, if somebody, I think I'm going with a bit of a kind of a wrong boys mind, like sort of flight of fancy here, but like, imagine if like, we got to this kind of point in like a communist utopia where like everything had been decriminalized, but there was a few obviously like very serious infractions, against like the social good, like the typical shit in like the 10 Commandments level of stuff, like don't rape, don't murder, like that's shitty. Don't premeditate skinning your neighbor alive and then wearing it around as a suit, right? Like that's stuff you don't want, right? But like typically you're like dealing with mental illness at that point too. And I just I keep thinking like, what if there was like at that point there was just kind of like, oh no, you did a mischief, so we're sending you off to Mischief Island, where you're there with 600,000 people who just like play video games and fuck off all day, so that you stay out of our fucking hair. Like I think that would be a worthwhile and kind of cute way to deal with people who like can't sit still in society. Like myself. And then people would be like,
they just go off to an island and
mischief.
Become like gremlins.
Right, exactly. And they're like, and so people like start doing like kind of like playing games with it. Like they're like, man, like I know I only work 12 hours a week and it's not even mandatory or compulsory. I just, sometimes I just want to fuck off like completely. So they're like, so
I just like to go take smoke breaks.
Right. I just went and I like threw a rock at somebody's house, and the mischief people came and got me in their fun car and like and just took me to Mischief Island for
Let
a
me
while,
drive it around a little bit.
Right. And Mischief Island is just like goofball riot time, You're just like, yeah, man, like we live in these free houses and they ship food and it's great. Everything's fine, Just get your wiggles out. Instead of being arrested,
you arrive on the island and you see a bunch of clowns like honking their noses and hitting themselves in the head with mallets.
Exactly right. And it definitely, and it's the kind of thing that would have the opposite effect of these horrible prisons that brutalize you and like sort of sculpt you into brutal people, and traumatize you into like further violence and like trauma bonding with other people who are in the same kind of situation and like and trauma bonding with people who are like truly heinous, who like get off on like evil things, and then you get out and you're stuck in some kind of gang or like you're people are following you around trying to get you to keep doing favors.
Gotta live at a halfway house.
Right, all this bullshit, and then people won't hire you because you're a fucking ex-con, and whatever the fuck, you can't vote because you're a felon. And it's like,
you gotta go
Mischief
work for
Island,
Dave's Killer Bread.
Yeah, Mischief Island would just re-socialize or kind of fun socialize all the people who just really are just so antsy that like they can't sit still, and they're like, I just wanted to steal a car, man. It just sounded fun, and you're like, hey, that sounds like a perfect ticket to guess where,
Like, yeah,
so
it's actually pretty weird because like having a car is actually a crime now, so
right, yeah, exactly, right. They're like, it's not that you took it, it's that you shouldn't have a car in the first place. Those are for museums now. Yeah. So that's my opinion. But So it amounts to nearly 600,000 inmates. This idea they had of like putting 39% of current prisoners into treatment, community service, etc. And they say
I
releasing
think
them
it should
would
be
not only mean
100%.
exactly right. Um, and that's it's like this is my problem, all of our problem, right, with like the mediocre like reform bullshit is that it's like, okay, so you said, oh, what if we put 39%, but like why don't we do 100%? Why don't we just fucking free everybody, right? Why would you stop? Why would you stop? Oh, well, because it's dangerous. Oh, who's it dangerous for? And then you go right back into that cycle. But they say, and this is the neoliberal shit coming back again, specifically, releasing them would not only mean freeing those citizens, but also freeing $20 billion per year. And here's where all the suits start touching themselves.
I'm glad the money gets freedom.
Right, yeah, it's freeing the billions. Oh, the billions.
It can finally spread its wings.
right. Those little flapping dollar bills, like fucking, just perching. Only every few years do the 20 billions hatch and spread their wings in the jungle of wealth in America. And we look at them through our telescopes and shit. And, yeah. But they say it's enough to employ 327,000 teachers, which of course, that's just like a fun, like liberal, like kind of little like grace note, right? Of just like, look at all the teachers we could employ. And you're like, that would be cool, right? Bunch of fucking teachers. You could pay teachers finally.
That's the guy who doesn't work equivalent of saying FTEs.
Yes, exactly, right. And I think this is funny though, because the defunding of education and like the destruction of the teaching profession, right, the gutting of all this, actually is in tandem with mass incarceration and all this other shit. Like, they just talked about fucking the budget balancing thing, which that's fair at the municipal level, but like their own logic, right? The system that they think in about, money's everything and capital's everything and shit. Like, it requires that we incarcerate people. It requires that we make people, that we like de-educate people and defund education, because it makes people more vulnerable and more easily exploitable. And it makes sure that like places like the Brookings Institute continue to receive funding to put out milquetoast propositions.
And that is like literally
they go on.
That is like part of the school to prison pipeline, is defunding schools so that schools get worse, which, as we just learned, makes them less safe, which means there's more violent crime, which means there's more kids getting arrested and put into juvie in prison.
Yep. Like they go, the infrastructure is already in place to absorb new jobs in local economies, whatever the fuck that means. There are counselors and programs for victims of sexual assault, services for people experiencing homelessness or suffering from addictions, like my addiction to planning things in Minecraft, and departments which respond to domestic abuse. These programs exist, but they are not adequately funded. Sure, yes. Reducing incarceration and police departments' bloated budgets will allow us to bolster these services and alleviate the burden we lay on police and prisons. Okay.
Now here's a question. Whose fault is it that these programs are not funded?
Right. Exactly. It comes back to that. It's like, come on, motherfucker. Be serious. Just let us fucking run this show. We know what we want. We know what's good for us. So the author does get pretty confrontational at this point. The militarization of police in urban areas exemplifies the inefficiency of racism. Good. Yeah, that's solid.
That's the big problem
in
with
a weird
racism is
way.
the inefficiency. But hey,
right. I'm like that's
this is probably a savage burn for someone who works at Brookings.
Absolutely. Right. Like, they're like, wow, if racism is an economic system,
God, you didn't have to go that far.
Inefficient, right? And this is like, neoliberal fucking mind trap of like, well, we're all about utility, efficiency, and capital returns.
The system just does what it does. It can only be
Right.
more
And
or less
racism,
efficient at it.
right. Racism is the wrong app to run on this machine. So like, it just clogs it up. It uses too much RAM. Yeah. Local cops
We
driving
need to
tanks do nothing.
build fewer racism factories and build more learning to code factories.
Yes, yes. If only the racists were learning to code, they would obviously just become more humane and not somehow like create racist drones or something. Which unfortunately is already the fucking case, but yeah.
Yeah, they're just called
Okay.
drones.
Yeah, exactly, right? Like local cops driving tanks do nothing to make communities safer. Yes, correct. The resources spent on training and maintenance for such wasteful equipment should be seen as stealing a job that could have been much more useful. Again, the ideology is just like so corny. They're like the cops. They're like, how do I make the cops sound bad, but like not so bad, but like bad? They're like, they're stealing your jobs. Like the cop tank is stealing your job, and you're like, oh, what? Okay, all right. I mean, okay,
Sure.
sure, yeah, all right. I mean,
I don't want the job, but I guess they took it from me.
exactly.
Okay.
Right. Military equipment in urban areas represents the extent to which we consider black people enemies of the state, not members of it. Yeah, that's true. If we truly want to add value to black majority neighborhoods, again, I hate that phrasing because I know what they mean, and it's racist itself. We should defund the police and prison systems to reprioritize that money in ways that respect the members of society that black people are. And that phrasing right there is also very fucking awkward.
Yeah.
Respect the members of society that black people are.
Yeah.
They're like it's like a fucking afterthought. They're like correcting themselves on the end. Like, come on, fucker. Like, start with people.
I will give it to him though. The one sentence at the beginning of that paragraph was good. Military equipment in urban areas represents the extent to which we
Yes.
consider black people enemies of the state.
Yes,
That's good shit.
I agree with that one.
Yeah.
I can't think of
Do
anything
more of that.
problematic about that specific.
Do less of the
sentence,
efficiency
right, exactly.
bullshit. No one cares about efficiency
None of
except for
this
you
efficiency
guys.
shit, yeah, none of this like fucking means testing and shit. Like, and if you're gonna abolish 100%, because if you're not abolishing 100%, you're not abolishing at all. You're not doing shit.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it'll just come right back.
So since we're on the subject, and admittedly, I haven't like tried to look into this myself, which I probably should, but I just haven't. So if we do the compromise thing of defunding the police instead of abolishing, disbanding the police,
right. So just like take away their.
What is to prevent the next person who comes into office from just refunding the police?
This is exactly what frustrates me about the defunding idea.
Yeah.
Because I think people are saying like, okay, defunding is like a digestible way to say abolish. It describes a process of abolition. And I am just going to bring up that phrase again that I used, which is deathmatch acceleration speed run. Ask for fucking everything.
Yeah.
This is not time to be like, well, people won't get it. You're like, if people don't get it after watching literally over 500...
People know what abolition is.
Yeah. If
Everyone learned about the abolitionist movement in fucking school.
Seriously. People were in the streets in every fucking state this time, and they are still out there, and people are talking. White people that I know are actually finally fucking listening to black people, and they're asking about these things. They're asking about what the fuck is happening, what's happening with the cops, or why are the cops like this, and I didn't know the cops were like this, and all this kind of shit, right? They're actually not, like when I told that person, I was like, eight can't wait is bullshit, and they were like, well, I don't know, I mean, what about, and I was like, no, eight's abolition is what we want. That was also, produced by black thinkers who are actually working in good faith. It is older than you probably think. This has been in the works for a while. This is legit. These are the things that we need. There's no fucking point in stepping backward even an inch. And we have to become militant about this abolition, about these changes to our fucking society, and we have to force people aggressively confront people in such a way that they have to fucking think critically and be creative with us, right?
Yeah.
Because you have to pin people and say, if you were bothered by all this, then what is to stop you from helping us? Which is why on Facebook I said, I basically just put it out there like a week or two ago now. I said, if you are not going to help us abolish the police, then I think we should start working on abolishing our friendship. And so I got some fucking reactions, yeah. And some people were like, "Well, I guess you're gonna have to cut me out." I was like, "All right, bye, bitch." Like, get the fuck out of my face. I said in my own replies to myself, basically just for clarity, I was like, I will cut you the fuck out of my life. I don't give a single fuck. Like, this shit is necessary. This is civil rights, and it is nothing less. And so we have to be very confrontational, but also educational, and we have to, be armed with resources to point people in the right direction, because libs are soft, and you can basically poke them with a stick in any given direction as long as they're listening, and don't let them go back to their fucking comfort zones. You have to keep guiding them until they actually pay attention kind of fully and just go with it, right? But even a lot of conservatives are apparently, from what I've heard, are like, dude, we really need to change what's going on.
Yeah.
I know one guy who was like, he's kind of like a conservative libertarian, kind of rural kind of guy, but he's like a thoughtful guy. He just doesn't necessarily know politics that well, but he's interested in like ethics and justice and stuff. But he posted something about how, like, he's like, I used to think that gradual reform was really like the most kind of sensible, stable way forward, with, any kind of like, police brutality as like these occasional things. But now that I've seen what happened at these protests, and I've looked at all this footage, he's like, we can't do anything less than abolition, or I should say, he said radical change, right? Like radical, like overhaul whatever the fuck we're doing with community safety and security, I was like, okay, cool. Well, welcome. Here's some thoughts. Here's some resources. Because if you're at that point, that's very important, and you can come with us. You might not even, you might not be into socialism. You might not be into any of this other shit. But if you believe in fucking police abolition, you can be on our team for this one. And I think we need to find those people if they haven't already come to us.
If you're a small government conservative, fucking prove it.
Yeah. Show us that you believe that the fascist cops should not run our fucking towns.
Yeah. If you have all those guns because you want to overthrow tyranny, prove it.
Yeah. Let's see it. Let's see the fucking courage.
Yeah.
So that's kind of my thinking on that. It's a nervous, terrifying, and exciting time.
It's wild how fast like everyone's rhetoric has changed. I mean, I don't know if that's going to result in actual outcomes, but
right. And I think what we're seeing is that the outcomes are happening at the municipal level, which I think is kind of proof in the pudding of, like, it may not be uniform. In fact, it really can't be uniform, and especially as like anarchists, decentral organizers, whatever, we really shouldn't expect that things will be uniform, because that implies that like some central hierarchy decided something for everybody, and that just isn't really appropriate, right? Because like deciding a policy that fits New York is gonna have to work for like fucking I don't know, random fucking
out
place
in Virginia,
Utah or something. Yeah, exactly. Like, that's just absurd, right? And I think most people would agree with that. But what it does require, of course, is that we take advantage of this opportune moment, this very key moment in North America and in the world, really, because people are watching us, and they're watching our legitimacy fade at the federal level, while they're also taking heart that the average American is actually rising up in support of Black lives against fucking fascist police state, right? And having the fucking difficult conversations that us leftists have been trying to get people to have for years, decades, and suddenly people are interested. Partly because of that surveillance that we talked about.
Yeah.
And so I think, I think
another...
we can do this.
Go ahead and finish.
Yeah, no, that's it. I think we can do this, and I think we just have to push hard.
I was going to say, I think another thing that would be a problem if we did try to do it at the federal level, even if we were capable of, achieving that level of power, it would obviously involve some compromise with the people who control most of the government, but also, but I think basically what would happen is, even if we did some police abolition thing, they would just expand some federal agency to take on the role of police.
Exactly.
And if things happen at the municipal level, there won't be as straightforward of a change, in that sense.
Right. Because there are like vertical checks and balances between like the municipal, state, and federal levels that would potentially act as kind of a firewall against, say, like federal intervention under most circumstances, I think. And so you could even forestall, for example, I think you could forestall like the deployment of the National Guard to your municipality, even if, like, say, the governor was interested in like quashing something, but then at the local level, you're like, no, this is good. We're having a little, luau or something with our community defense folks, and we just don't want you to interfere with us kind of rearranging the guts of our town here. And I'm pretty sure that there are ways that people can discover in their particular municipalities, because everyone is a little bit different, right? Some are like, oh, we have a mayor, oh, we have a council, oh, we have a city manager, whatever.
Yeah.
Oh, we have a sheriff, oh, we have a constable. There is that level of variety, that degree of variety that people should just research on their own. And I think another way that they can kind of get involved in local kind of like change making is to look at the laws on the books for their municipality, because I used to proofread municipal legal code for about a year for a job, and there's a lot of laws that are still on the books that are fucking bullshit. Whether it's because it's like, oh, you can't ride an elephant on Sunday, and people are like, wait, what? Well, apparently some guy had an elephant and he was riding it around, and they said, well, just not during church, And so there's a fucking law in this one town that's like that, whatever it was. And then
there's no law that says a dog can't be a cop.
Right, exactly, right. And then other places it's much more grievous shit that people just haven't reviewed because they don't think that they can have access to their own laws anymore, right? And so it's like, oh, for example, the fucking, if you detain somebody, you can have sex with them without repercussion. Yeah. Right? It's like, well, maybe people in a municipality would be interested in either removing that permission or creating a bar on that permission or something like that, and getting active in that sense, organizing in the municipality to do that sort of thing as well. And then potentially also, while there is a United States to fucking deal with, potentially also putting laws on the books in the municipality that create these firewalls we were talking about against interference from, say, like, what if there's a full-on mask-off fascist takeover at the federal level and they decide these little rebel municipalities, gotta go. And you're like, okay, well, maybe you can save yourself like a week or two by putting some roadblocks in place. I don't know how this fucking works at this level, and I don't know, constitutionally how it would work, but I think people should really research that, look into it locally.
Another thing,
and abolish the cops.
This is gonna sound very liberal, but if that recent Twitter thread is to be believed, letter writing campaigns can actually like totally derail a local government for a while.
Yeah, Yep. If you actually have variety in your message, right? Like, don't copy
Yeah.
paste shit. Write your actual letter, send it, and they have to fucking deal with it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I would
If there's
suggest
a
I would
bunch of you.
suggest, right, I would suggest going like every route, right? You do everything. You send them an email, personal email
I believe
to
that's
every
what the anarchists refer to as diversity of tactics.
yeah. And pushes up glasses. But like you send them an email to everybody in the fucking local government, so that it's in every fucking inbox, and everybody does that, right? So you get like
You hack
3,000
their
people
website
sending
and you
everybody
put
a
pig
fucking
poop balls
email.
on it.
And you do whatever you want. Yeah, do what you want with that, and then you also send them a physical letter, right?
That
So
says pee
everybody
pee poo
does
poo.
that, right? And then you call them, right? So it's a calling campaign as well, And then you also flood them on Twitter and Facebook with ats and mentions,
Yeah, you switch
If
the
you do
first letter
that,
of their first and last name.
exactly. And if you do that, all of that, and you have enough people doing it, you can just fog them out until they just start so fucking exhausted, from the weight of their collective obligations and so forth that, they fucking have to do something.
Yeah.
And then you're like, hey, we want so and so for sheriff. And they're like, why? We've never heard of him. And you're like, no, just trust me. Yeah.
Well, do you have anything else?
Not really. My cat, as usual, says fuck 12. So, that's basically all we got from him. And, the weather's pretty good here. I keep thinking about how, like, people think of, summer as the riot season, right? And there have been articles in the past that said, as climate change gets worse, the insurgencies and riots will get worse too, because it'll just be a longer and longer season every year. And I'm like, that sounded sort of scary for a while, but now it's starting to sound pretty cool.
Yeah.
Like a cool zone.
All right.
That's all I got.
Yeah. So we're going to go ahead and exit the cool zone now.
All right.
Go back to the uncool zone. And yeah, I'm not going to plug anything because don't need to. And yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for listening. And thank you, Kris, for coming on. Thanks for the episode idea.
Yeah, no, this was fun.
Hopefully we can do more in the future since we're all in quarantine.
Hell yeah. Yeah, I think that'd be a good idea.
All right. Bye, everyone.